Hi, folks. Today we're going to talk about communication to laboratories. This is in regards to Neodent single implant restorations. So the GM connection, the Grand Morse connection, has a couple unique features. It is a 3.0 platform throughout 7 different diameters of implant, and the cone or the Morse taper is a 16-degree taper inside. So what happens is, as we aided by a screw, as we pull down the abutment and create a cold weld or lock the two pieces in, we mitigate bacteria getting in through that gap. So this is a 16-degree Morse taper platform switch. Let's talk a little more about it. As we see here on the left, communication to the labs is really important. No fault of the surgeon that perhaps placed the implant, no fault of the restorative dentist that took all the proper records and sent things to the laboratory. We could have a restoration such as this. This was a tenured rep that actually called me and said, we got it down, we got everything in, we checked the bite. How is this restoration going to do moving forward? It's going to unfortunately end up losing bone over time. Let's figure out why. We've created this flyer. It's a 2-page flyer, double-sided, to talk about 3 different attributes that we're trying to communicate, or information that we need to share with the laboratories that's imperative for good restoration. Let's break it down. So this is a really good time to remind our laboratories that this is not the only connection, the GM, but we also have the 2.9 implant, which is its own separate connection, narrow GM. The ZI implant has its own connection, as well as the helix short, which is a tissue level implant. So 1, let's remind our laboratories. 2, we always need an x-ray, right? 3rd is concave versus convex. Concave, we need our restorations to start narrow and then emerge and go wider, and then the healing abutment size of what's placed. So there's our connections, the GM, helix short, 2.9, and the ZI. And let's get into an x-ray, the first thing. So we do have a tissue measurement gauge. It's in both our prosthetic kits and our surgical kits. This is a great tool to use if we're not sharing this tissue measurement gauge, which has these notches in the side picked up in an x-ray. We certainly would love to, as you see in the bottom here, use a scan body or an impression coping and share that. We're still going to see the most important thing, where that implant is placed in regards to bone. Most of the Neodent implant placements, especially for singles, we try to go a little bit subcrestal. This is not typically picked up by the laboratories. They have no idea where that implant is placed. In regards to bone, they might know where the implant is position-wise, and they might know where the height of the tissue is, but they do not know, if we don't share an x-ray, where the implant is in relation to bone. We can see in this picture on the right that we've obviously placed an implant. The laboratory didn't know how deep subcrestal the implant was placed. They thought they picked the appropriate margin on the abutment, and it's hugging or it's banging right up against bone. Very difficult to seat this restoration. I can't get this thing down. Even better than maybe sharing a scan body or impression coping, ideally, we could share an x-ray of the healing abutment. Would love to see. Keep in mind, it's a 3.0 platform. I could lift both of these healing abutments up out of the implants. I could completely switch them and place them back down on top. So it's very important to share a healing abutment size. We're going to get to that in a minute. Concave versus convex, something that's going too wide too fast. This is also noted on our flyer that we want to start narrow. We don't want to push or blanch on that tissue. Have a beautiful restoration down here from Dr. Raymond, showing how we placed the 2 implants at tooth numbers 8 and 9 subcrestal. It's that concave or narrow emergence profile before we go convex out at the contacts. Another dentist sent me a very nice picture, said please share this with everyone, that this is the healing abutment I had placed on top of the implant. I went in, took my records, but this, the incorrect restoration sent by the laboratory, is too wide, it's too fast, nothing seated, nothing was correct. Okay, so if we think about the size of our healing abutment, if we share that with the laboratories, then they can mimic or match with mirror prosthetics, we call this. They can match the healing abutment size with things like picking a tie base, if you will, or even creating the margins specifically for that patient with custom abutments. But they need to know the size of the healing abutment. So if it's a 3-3 diameter healing abutment, we use a 3-3 tie base, or we have to keep our final abutment in that same diameter. Next for 4-5, same thing. 5-5, we can go a little bit wider. So ideally, we do want to use wider healing abutments when we get into the posterior. The teeth are larger. And then here's a great picture just below mirror prosthetics that a laboratory used, mimicking that same emergence profile of a 5.5 diameter healing abutment with a 3.5 height. And we see that they matched that emergence. It starts concave and then goes convex. And I know that that thing's going to seat on top of the implant. And then lastly, here's just a case. So again, we've got a beautiful posterior place implant. It is subcrestal in bone. We used a 5.5 by 3.5 healing abutment. We see some lucency here because it's a peak healing abutment. We do have these in metal as well. Beautiful tissue. Took a picture of what the tissue looks like healed, placing one of these, and we simply mimicked that emergence profile. You see it starts concave, which is ideal. We're trying to keep this margin 1.5 millimeters away from bone, ideally. And then we see here to the right, we have the restoration seated. It would have been difficult if somebody just sends a restoration with the crown seated on the abutment to figure out where the margin is on the abutment to seat our crown, right? And then we can see here there's just a little bit of blanching. This is no problem, but we have this nice custom abutment designed. And then, of course, we see the restoration. So I hope this helps. It's really important to communicate these things to your laboratory, right? First is send an x-ray. Second is concave versus convex, right? We want to start concave with our emergence profile. Third thing, share that healing abutment size. Please share that so that we can mimic that same emergence profile from the laboratories for your final restorations. Thanks so much.